Good afternoon, morning, evening, or night, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we'll be talking about Arcane. And why, in the end, I do think that it was quite mid. I think we should first get rid of some more obvious things before we get into the actual discussions and my opinions on it. I just want to first address that the show, first of all, looks great. I love the animation, I love the style, and I think that was a great decision to use the in-house studio, and they did an excellent job, and I would like more like this. Definitely, more like it. But I think that how the show looks is pretty much the only remarkable thing that it has going on for me. I think that the rest, it didn't invoke any really strong emotions in me. It was just really left me kind of feeling that, yeah, this was a show I watched, but I really didn't get what was the big hype around it and why were people praising it that much. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. I think it was a 5 out of 10, middle in the road, and nothing special really. And then another thing I should maybe mention is that I haven't played League of Legends, nor have I interacted with the world or the lore at all prior to this. But I don't think it should matter, nor will it matter, to my opinions on this show. So yeah, I think we'll be starting by talking a little about the world of Arcane. Okay, so the world of Arcane, to me, felt quite underdeveloped. There was the whole upper versus lower part of town, upside, topside, downside, upside, monkey go setting, but I really felt like it was quite basic. It is a quite basic setup. Let's be honest here. I think not even much different from what even Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds did. I really didn't feel like a unique spin to the whole thing, at all. They just kind of told us that the lower parts are bad for people and kind of being exploited, and then the top side is being this out of touch entity that's they just kind of tell us that the the downside is bad and that people there are struggling. But for me, at least for me, I don't think they really managed to show how. I didn't even get the idea that who are there. I only saw the people in the bar and the main groups, but I really left out feeling so who are the actual people here? What are they doing? How are they getting exploited? Why are they getting exploited? And instead, I just kind of felt that all of this whole divide and these problems were kind of insisted upon instead of elaborated on. And I just ended up feeling like these two places felt completely separate places that were not even dependent on each other that much. They were talking about the mines, how the downside is doing the mining for the upside, but what are they mining, and why is the mining operations so underdeveloped? And they were clearly trying to push this dystopian, kind of basic dystopian feeling with the under and lower side, having the police force called the enforcers, and they were clearly trying to push this look of them, the whole look, how they look. It's just clearly going for this dystopian authoritarian force. But or what they came out in the show was just the regular police force of the top side that sometimes goes down there because people up there want a scapegoat. And they I think the idea was there to just push that they really just go down there to maybe just pin the problems on someone, on something there. But it felt kind of funny because all the problems in the show that was presented was actually caused by the downside people, and we only kind of see just the underground people being the problem actually and causing trouble, instead of showing why are they causing the trouble, why are they in these situations where they need to rebel against just. I didn't even know what's the average person there is and what's the trouble. And even if they were successfully communicating this very basic setup, again, I think it's very basic, and I think it's nothing that hasn't been done a million times before. Was really struggling to get invested into this world, and I don't think the show even properly tried to. But what I did like about the world on the upside really was like the whole concept of like this being the scientific city and kind of the fear of magic, and then there being like this kind of new revolution with the like the scientification of magic, and some kind of a little reaction of people like being afraid of this change, but also like kind of starting this new boom and then like accepting it maybe a little bit too fast, maybe kind of like this industrial revolution thing really. And like I did like the narrative like kind of pushing down there also that like maybe they're kind of playing with forces that they don't really understand about. But that's the stuff that I did like, and I will get into it more when I talk about Heimerdinger, I think, later. When it comes to the plot, I'm really like struggling to say much of all about it. All of the story beats felt really predictable. It didn't surprise me at any point along the way, and everything just kind of happened as one would expect. Like, example for me was when, like, right after the time skip, there was the moment where we saw like the fireflies for the first time. These going with the almost immediately I was like, so obviously the leader of these guys is gonna be the Echo Kid, or that one. Like, me and my wife were just like out loud, we were like predicting to each other like what would happen and how it would happen, and like most of it was correct with what we predicted. Even like not as much, but we even predicted dialogue word by word in some scenes. I felt like everything happening in the top side was like the more interesting part, and everything happening in the downside was like the stuff I was really struggling to get engaged in and invested in. Not like neither did I get really attached to the characters, but I really wasn't like. I think the problem was that, like I mentioned earlier, that like they were just trying to push like these main characters that were kind of like underwhelming, and they really didn't tell me to root for the down part of town as a whole. I wasn't really able to like. I don't even know who there is. I just know these main characters. Again, I think all of the troubles there was just mainly caused by Silico, and I really didn't understand his motives either. And he really felt like this kind of generic, just bad guy causing some trouble. I really just like wasn't able to really care what was going on there. Stayed quite consistent with the show, always me like being like, okay, I'm interested what's happening in the top side, not interested at all what's happening in the downside, down part of town. I don't know, everything just kind of felt predictable and safe. After the show, I really didn't feel like I would be interested to see more of it. Nothing that I haven't really seen before, done even maybe better, usually better, or just in the same level in general. Didn't surprise me at any point. And when I watched the show, I really wanted to entertain me, and I was getting even a little bored. So then we get a little bit more to the more subjective, well, everything here is subjective, but like this next thing, especially the music of the show, I wasn't really a fan. For me, I just didn't think that it fit at all, and I think the show would have really benefited from a more original soundtrack. I don't really remember anything about the Ost, and I think Jerma maybe put it the best.
The only thing I remember from Arcane was, "Oh, the misery! Every single person is my enemy." That's all. That's the only thing I know. I'm radioactive, radioactive. Every single person is my enemy.
Besides that, like, there is a scene with like Jinx working on her like little things, and I think that's like her character song or something. It really felt like the song was just like really explaining out loud what she was thinking and like what was going on. It felt really like not subtle at all. Not much to say here about like the actual soundtrack, but all of the like the licensed stuff and the songs, it's subjective, but I wasn't a fan of at all. I think I want to talk about a little bit of some specific scenes. I think we should start with the initial, like, kind of the catalyst scene, the explosion scene, the Sag scene. They were really trying to push emotions there that I really wasn't with. I think it becomes really funny when you think about the scene when you realize that, like, the explosion that powder causes only does damage to those two throwaway generic friend characters. Like, even if you think about it, even like the blonde kid guy, drugged up blonde kid guy, like, he just gets up and then he and the father figure guy just have, like, kind of finishes the fight as if, like, the explosion didn't even really happen. Like, the emotions that they're trying to force through were a little bit too obvious to me, and when they don't hit you, you just kind of left out thinking it's a little comedical. And then we have the Imagine Dragons cameo scene of, like, like, she comes back and they're trying to build up this scene with the music playing, and they even have the band there, and, like, she's walking there, going to comfort this lady. I really didn't understand why they're pushing, like, this thing between we and this lady, because I don't even remember her name. She hasn't done anything. There's anything to remember her from. I think team with many of these scenes that they're really trying to push some kind of a moment, even with the music, kind of like pushing this narrative that I'm really not buying. And I wish I could be able to say anything, like, explain in better ways why I think these scenes are lacking, but, well, I'm not really that good even at critiquing, and I'm just trying to say what I feel. We have the underground bosses scene. I think this scene was really funny because I have no idea who these people were. I don't know their names. I don't know what they do. Why are they suddenly in the story? If you take them away, nothing actually changes. Like, tell me that if you take any of the scenes that these underground bosses guys are in, would anything change? Not at all. Because after this, like, Sigma male scene we have from Silico going in there and putting the gas on and saying, like, oh, you have forgotten where you have been and you have everything so well off now. We used to struggle and we used to have it hard and now you have forgotten. Of course they have forgotten, because I have forgotten. You didn't even tell me what their struggles were, really. At least I guess they tried. And then, like, the follow-up scene with, like, this e-boy guy trying to, like, get the henchman second-hand woman again that I don't really remember the name of. We have this scene where the lady is, like, the show is trying to make us believe, like, she's gonna go along with it for no reason. It's only for us, because in the next scene, of course I'm loyal, and, like, Silico being like, yeah, she's loyal, and it didn't matter. Take the scene away, nothing changes in the grand scene of the show. Then there was the bridge scene. With the Sonic Raiders boy and Jinx. You know that scene with the music and the good looking animation and, like, this fight scene kind of thing. And, like, I would be maybe a little bit more invested in this scene if these two characters would even have had, like, a conversation in this show before to this point. Yeah, you're telling me that these guys had a relationship and childhood together, but you haven't shown it to me before. Why are they resolving something together? Why is there, like, so much effort in the scene between these characters that have essentially nothing built upon between them in this entire show? Yeah, it looks good, and I think it would be a lot better if there was something behind it. You know that part where, like, the science boy, forgotten his name, the guy with the hammer in the end, basically the person who kickstarted the whole new science wave in the whole upper part of the city, basically the most important person for the city at the moment. And then we have him going on to the front lines, and you're expecting me to take it seriously. For the first time in his life, having a fight, swinging his hammer, have the whole music going. Like, what are the stakes here? Like, obviously nothing is gonna happen to him, and if something happened to him, it would be actually kind of funny, because, like, why are you there? Why is anybody letting you go? It doesn't work like that. You have so much responsibility behind you. And then at the end, where we and him almost began to fight, because there would be absolutely no way they could justify it being a fight at all, because we have seen that V has experience growing up in the streets. Like, there's no way this science guy would have even been able to stand a chance in that fight. And good thing that they, like, realized it, but I left with the feeling that they actually don't even, like, realize that, and I think they just tried to have, like, no, he's staying the higher ground here. Like, obviously they can't fight because he would get the shit beaten out of him. Jinx tea party scene and the whole like climatic, her shooting at the building and like this note to the story. I don't know. I kind of wish that her head would have been in the box, to be honest. At least the show would have surprised me in some matter. To this point, all her explosions have just hurt some very specific niche characters that really didn't matter. Her friends dying, and then the policeman, I think he died from the explosion, being the only other person taking real like significant damage from those explosions. Having her shoot at the building is just leaving me to believe that in the start of the next season we're just gonna show that like maybe the more irrelevant parts of the conscious are gonna die and nobody else is gonna get a lot more really relevant damage. If they all die, color me impressed. Okay, that's doing something more interesting and like surprising me a little bit, but then again, how is the story even continuing from there? That's like the only thing they have going for, so really struggling to care why would I watch more when the show really doesn't have much to offer to me personally. Well, let's just say that it's already a little bit of a bad sign that as of now, around 1 year after watching the show, there's only 5 names I remember, them being V, Jinx, Victor, Silico, and Heimendinger. 3 of those being names that if I didn't remember it would be quite embarrassing for the show, being V, Jinx, and Silico. And the last 2 being the only characters that I actually kind of liked. Heimerdinger being the only character that I genuinely liked. And I think he was actually maybe the only good character in the whole show. I really liked him being like this kind of a fresh take on this character who represents the past, kind of being stuck in it and a little bit afraid of the changes and development, but understandably so. Him being the only one who has lived through and seen what magic can do when things go wrong, and he being like the only one who actually like respects and fears these forces that they don't really understand. Well, not the only one, but like the others kind of forget that and start moving on. I think he was just like really well handled. We all know like this really generic way of handling this kind of character, and they really didn't go there, and instead like even to the point where like Hammonding saying that like that looks like the very thing that I watched bring down an entire civilization. Like he of course he objects to that. He has like the character in him to like with dignity and understanding, like stepping down, that I'm not appreciated, my wisdom here is not appreciated any longer, I have nothing to do here, I did what I'd warmed and I tried, and like stepping down. And I really think he was really just like a really fresh take on this kind of character, and I liked him. And then Victor, I also kind of liked for some reason. I think he was left a little underdeveloped too, especially like with his relationship and friendship with the science boy guy. I think all of that was handled in off screen, and the rest was then we like kind of this arc of him like being a little bit left to the sidelines and being like then kind of him driving alongside with the disease that he had, which also was like the only real attempt of them like explaining what's going bad down with the downside, and not really like explaining like what is this now. He just have the same disease that all the people in the shows really die for, where they cough in the napkin and they have blood and they're like, okay, now they're dying. Like, even though those things feel a little underwhelmed, I don't even know why I really liked Victor that much, but he for some reason was a little bit of a standout, and I think he had a lot of potential, and I think they should have put a little bit more weight into his part in the story and expanded on a little bit more instead of some other character that I will get into later. But like, I think then way to handling like kind of this magic thing, the force that you shouldn't really play with, he was kind of the only aspect to it, and like his experiment and kind of like this villain arc. Like, instead of there being some actual impactful consequences and resolve to this aspect, we have the comical scene where his assistant dies just about to like confess her love to Victor. Again, this lady has had like maybe 2 lines of dialogue in the entire show. You guessed it, I don't know her name. I was like, so really, that this is like the emotional build-up and climax to this arc? Kinda weak.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
For the rest of the cast, V and the police girl, I guess the chemistry was fine. I didn't mind watching them. V was just kind of the main character and her being kind of the Lancer, I guess. The one with the golden tattoos, from some family higher up. She confused me a little. I really wasn't sure whether or not they were trying to push the thing that like she was only using the science boy, or was the matter that she was first using him but then grew feelings towards him, or like never actually cared about him, or all the way from the beginning she was just genuine and never ever manipulated him. I left feeling like, okay, well, so what was the motivation with her here? What is their relationship actually? What does she actually think? Like, I don't think I felt confused on purpose in a good way, and more like the show either really didn't know. But then there was this one character that I didn't like. Jinx was ass. She felt like a Margot Robbie-esque Harley Quinn type of generic studio quirky girl, instead of being like a actual or interesting representation of mental illness. I did not feel like the writers were trying to express anything with her, and she just really came out as this pandering, marketable, waifu-baiting quirky girl mascot from a gacha game or something. And her progression into this Jinx character felt kinda clumsy. Her killing the generic friend characters by accident came out more as comical than tragic, and the show really tried hard to make me feel sad for her, and in my opinion they failed quite badly. I really didn't buy her transformation into this teenage supervillain either. If she wasn't already like a video game character, I think in the vacuum of the show, I really can see how this 16-year-old TikTok girl with hashtag damaged written on her forehead should be a super soldier, effectively. Scenes with her and Silico were borderline uncomfortable to me. Again, we're told that now they suddenly have this father-daughter relationship which was developed off screen, and I really didn't need to see her sitting in his lap being talked to as like she was a little girl. How hard is it to make your waifu-bait characters adults? We even had a time skip. Just make her 18. And also, why am I supposed to believe like she has any tinkering, weapon making and bomb making talent now? And suddenly, we are supposed to believe that she can make this functioning super weapon out of hex tech that this science guy has dedicated most of his adult time and time in the very school that teaches you engineering and research and stuff, like committing himself to this research, and we're suddenly just made to believe that she just kind of learned this now without like any proper researches or knowledge about this thing, and that like realistically she would just ended up blowing herself up in the process. And I don't think people will like this, but I think she could also be removed from the story quite easily. Like, of course, the way it's written now, you can't remove her from the story. I guess it's pointless for me to say this because like everybody likes her. It turned out successful and it turned out to be the right thing to do, and it's only just some people like me complaining about it. So like, not really sure what I'm trying to get here at, but like suggesting changes to it. But like, in my opinion, maybe you could have just like expanded Victor a little bit more, have his research with the thing going too far, handling the forces. He really doesn't understand that being like the catalyst for the ending dramatic explosion kind of scene. And like if you remove Jinx from the picture, tweak things a little bit around, like you don't really need her there. Silico can be up to his like shenanigans on his own. We can still be going around investigating, trying to get revenge on Silico. Write that initial explosion scene a little different, because again the explosion only damaged those two throwaway characters anyways. Heck, maybe you could have even elaborated a little bit more on Silico being like the actual villain of this show. But yeah, I guess everybody seemed to love Jinx anyway, so what am I to say? I don't know. In conclusion, the animation, art style and the whole general presentation was great. I also think that the show's success is heavily riding on that fact, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but I personally would have wanted a bit more substance behind the style. The setting felt generic, underexplored, and the story beats were quite predictable. The characters ranged from mostly fine to forgettable, and the music really wanted to be my enemy. Overall, Arcane was a mostly inoffensive show that really did not really make me feel much of anything while watching, and only becomes worse the more I think about it. Thank you for watching, and good evening or something. Bye.